diabetes. And I mean, just real quickly, what are some of the reasons why y'all showed up today? I don't want to.
Runs in my family, and my sister is pre-diabetic.
Ah, gotcha. We'll talk about pre-diabetes as well. Yeah.
I have it,
Okay.
Wow.
and I've heard that it can be eliminated as type 2. It's still, even though I've had it for a while, I've heard it's possible that I could
Yes.
get it back on,
That's-
get off that track.
100%
And so
correct.
I want to hear that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
All around my family. I don't have it, but it's all around me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My
And typically it is. I mean, it's so pervasive that typically, you know, especially the type 2 diabetes, it's skyrocketing, right?
Yes.
We're hearing about it over and over.
Yeah. And yeah, it's so prevalent that many people in a family will have it. So if you're not knowledgeable about it, you might even think, oh, it's genetic. I have this because it runs in my family. But we'll talk about how that's not true.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So, well, want to start at the top?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is?
Yeah, what is diabetes, right? So
Yes.
diabetes in general is chronic high blood sugar and the inability to bring it down. There's two different types. There's type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is typically diagnosed as a child, usually under the age of 12. However, we're seeing now, we actually just talked to a patient recently that was just telling us that he's considered more of a type 1. So type 1, basically the pancreas does not make insulin. The cells that create insulin in the pancreas have been damaged to the point where they no longer make insulin. So you have to have insulin from the inside out in order to keep blood sugar down.
Yeah.
So it's considered an autoimmune issue.
Yeah, it's considered an autoimmune issue, and that's not the type that you'll typically that's exploding as much as type 2. These are like children that need to take insulin. Someone that was diagnosed with it from a very young age, under the age of 12. And like Dr. Taylor said, it's an autoimmune issue. So you may have heard about how it's been linked to milk. Has anybody heard that?
Oh yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, you wanted to do that one?
Yeah,
Yeah.
So cow's milk protein is called casein. And when a baby is young, giving them cow's milk, because their gut is more open before the age of 1, and can typically stay open even longer than that, especially if they have multitudes of antibiotics, vaccines, steroids, things like that at a very young age. It keeps the gut leaky. So up until the age 1, normally a normal human being has a leaky gut.
So this is why you don't feed babies just anything.
Yeah.
You don't want to give them raw honey. You don't want to give them milk. We've all heard these things.
Right, before the age of 1. So what happens is that those milk proteins passes through the gut, and they mimic the cells in the pancreas that create insulin. So it kind of looks the same to the immune system. So once these large molecule proteins pass into the bloodstream, then the immune system goes, oh, you're not self, so it starts attacking it, right? Anything that's not self, it attacks. Well, then all of a sudden it starts kind of roaming around the pancreas and says, oh, you look like
You look
the
like the
same
bad guy.
thing. Yeah, you like the bad guy. So then it starts attacking the pancreas. So that child's own immune system starts attacking the cells in the pancreas, and therefore the pancreas stops making insulin, therefore blood sugar goes up.
So that's the type 1 diabetic. Now, type 2 is what's most common. And type 2 is related to lifestyle and to food. So type 2 is the type that until the last 10, 15 years, you would see this in adults only. Usually an older adult, someone who's put on a lot of weight over the years, someone who doesn't have enough information about how to limit sugars, maybe eats a really high sugar diet, someone that's likely has some blood pressure issues. There's usually a few things that go along with it. And that's the type that we always saw just in adults. Now, there's been a change, and we're actually seeing this in younger and younger and younger people, to where teenagers are now being diagnosed with a type 2 diabetes. And then we've got a third category that's a new category in the past 20 years,
Yeah.
which is a type 1.5.
I thought there was a 3.
No, type 1.5,
Yeah.
because these are adults who have the type 1. So they have the autoimmune type of diabetes, but they've been diagnosed with it as an adult. And so what was happening was that these people were actually being misdiagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, and they were told, okay, like you need to lose some weight, you need to, get yourself in shape, exercise. And they did that, but it wasn't really having any effect on their blood sugar. And so then the doctors realized, oh, we have this entirely new category, which is people with the autoimmune problem showing up way later in life. And so even some of these people are even, you would look at them and doctors were really confused because they didn't fit the profile at all. They might be athletes or, a very thin person with low blood sugar or low blood pressure. And so, it caused a bit of a question for quite a while, but now we've got it categorized. We've got type 1 as a child, type 1.5, which is autoimmune but happens later in life, and then type 2, which is the type that can be corrected and reversed and modified using diet and lifestyle.
So just to kind of give you an idea about, how type 2 is skyrocketing, I actually found this chart here. So American sugar consumption over the past 300 years has just exploded. And I guarantee you that most people don't really know what they're eating is sugar. So if you look right here, it starts right here in the 1700s. So this is per year that people eat this. So it used to be around 4 pounds here and up to 180 pounds all the way up here. That's a lot of freaking sugar, guys.
Per person in 1
Per
year?
person. So have you ever seen that Jamie Oliver video where he dumps a bunch of sugar into a school bus about how much children just in chocolate milk alone in schools are drinking on a monthly yearly basis?
Wow.
It started pouring out of a giant school bus. It was crazy.
Yeah, and so that brings a point. I think that a lot of people don't realize that they are actually consuming this much sugar. Because, for example, chocolate milk, we wouldn't really think of that as a junk food.
Especially since they serve it in all schools, every day, all day.
Right, like, yeah, we tell our
Given
children,
a choice.
you need to drink your milk, milk's good for you. And that's not untrue, but when you add a lot of sugar, chocolate and sugar to it, then it becomes a little bit more like a soft drink.
It's a dessert.
And we wouldn't really think of telling our kids, like, drink your Coke for breakfast before you can get up from the table. But when you're looking at chocolate milk that has, a similar amount of sugar to it, we're just not informed about what's in it.
Isn't that crazy though?
And then, so let's look at a typical breakfast. So we have our kid getting ready. They already have some chocolate milk. Maybe we want to make sure that they get some vitamin C, so we also give them some orange juice. A piece of toast, some peanut butter. What else would we give them? Eggs. Eggs is a great suggestion.
But
Cereal.
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 How many parents are a bagel?
A bagel. Yeah.
You
Maybe
know,
some jam.
Cereal.
I mean, kids really like jelly.
Mhm.
Pop-Tart. So really the only thing that was in that sentence that wasn't sugar was egg.
Yeah. All of that is sugar, because if you look at whether it's a type 1 or type 2 diabetic, when you're having to check your blood sugar, or say if you're insulin dependent, either type 1 or type 2 or that 1.5, you're not just looking at, you're looking at maybe a label or something like to see how much sugar is in something before you give yourself a shot. What you're looking at is the total carbohydrate count. So carbohydrates could be 30, but the sugar is 8. So as a diabetic, you want to look at carbohydrate, because once you ingest that, it turns to sugar. So a
So when the
bowl,
label says 8 grams, that's not counting whatever the carbs is, that's totally
correct.
separate?
You have to
Yeah.
look at the total carbohydrate count. Otherwise, you're not getting the full picture. If you look at total carbohydrate, then that's how much sugar you were taking in.
Okay, so does the carb number factor in the sugar number, or those are two separate
Yes, it's
numbers?
all of it together.
Okay.
It's all of it together.
The sugar number is just like the kind of added simple sugar that's in there.
Right. It's what they added to it. So it could have started off with 20 grams of sugar, just the carbohydrate in whatever product it is. Then they add more, and that's
Yeah.
where that sugars is.
And isn't it true if you take the fiber number?
That would
Yeah.
be net carbs, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what she was saying is if you've got a carbohydrate and then they usually put fiber just below that and then sugar just below that. So say it's 20 grams of total carbohydrate and there's 5 grams of fiber, you subtract that, so then you're actually getting 15 grams because it slows that sugar content down.
Yeah, fiber is actually a carbohydrate, but it digests differently, so you take that out. Okay, so let's talk about metabolic syndrome for a moment.
Okay.
Well, real quick, would you go back, why are we now at 180?
Let's circle back around to that in a moment.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll get to
kinda
that.
circle back around. So metabolic syndrome, has anybody heard about this? It's kind of,
It's a catch-all.
yeah. So metabolic syndrome is basically pre-diabetes. So pre-diabetes is just it's saying, okay, you're right on the edge, your blood sugar is getting a little bit too high, you have some warning signs, now's the time to get this under control, or you will probably end up needing insulin. So there's 5 markers of metabolic syndrome, and the 5 markers are an increased waist circumference. So it should be less than half of your body height. So if you're 60 inches, it should be less than 30 inches.
So it's at the belly button. Not
Yeah, no.
here, like, how, you know how guys do that? Like, you know, I have a 34-inch waist. You know, you have a 38-inch waist. Okay. So yeah, it's at the belly button, where the circumference is at the belly button.
Yeah. Elevated blood pressure, raised triglycerides, and a reduced HDL cholesterol. So that's what's commonly referred to as your healthy cholesterol. Although that's a whole nother workshop.
Yeah, we won't go there. Don't get me all excited.
And then the last one is your raised fasting glucose levels.
What was number 3 again?
Raised triglyceride levels.
And raised or?
Raised.
Raised.
Mhm.
Yeah. And so if you've got even a couple of those, now's the time to take action, because it's so much easier to prevent than it is to backtrack once something's already taken hold.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the difference between what the American Diabetic Association thinks are good fasting glucose levels and what some people in functional nutrition are talking about.
So the difference between like functional nutrition, functional medicine, you've probably heard of that before, and your traditional medical model is that functional medicine takes into account the entire person, the entire body. Whereas more traditional Western medicine takes into account just these lab values, anything outside of that, they're very strict on that. So when we're looking at functional medicine, you've got to look at, it's a little bit more inclusive of how the entire body is functioning, not just these lab values.
Yeah, for example, functional medicine and functional nutrition can kind of be used interchangeably. That practitioner is looking at the whole body. They're not just looking at, say, your blood pressure and then looking to treat only the blood pressure. They're looking at the whole body to say, okay, what are the lifestyle factors that are happening here? What are the nutritional factors that are happening? Why is your body, which is your organism, responding in this kind of way? which is a little bit different approach than just simply looking at that one symptom and trying to correct that one without looking at the whole
Yeah.
organism.
So it's typically lab value, what drug does with that.
Yeah.
So that's that approach.
And those values are based typically off of a middle-aged white man, and none of us in the room are a middle-aged white man. So, you know, we can take that with a grain of salt as well.
Exactly. All right.
Okay,
So you want to just go with the normals?
yeah, let's go with what the American Diabetic Association says first.
So
So this is your medical approach.
this is the medical. So this is what the American Diabetic Association says is considered normal. So under 99 for fasting glucose.
So that means you've taken your last meal in the evening, you've slept all night, and 12 hours later you take your blood glucose level and you see what those numbers are.
As long as it's under 99, you're good.
You're good. Let's actually go.
Yeah, are there
This
particular
doesn't-
units associated with 99?
Milligrams per deciliter.
And then if you look at the functional medicine numbers for that, they actually say less than 86 is ideal. So you're at more than a 10-point variance there.
I thought they had changed the medical approach to 124.
So just one moment.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
There's 3 different values
Okay,
we're
gotcha.
gonna go through here, yeah. All right, just gonna go to just go around here. So the fasting blood glucose for pre-diabetes, according to the ADA, is between 100 and 125. So that would be pre-diabetes.
Say that again.
So if they're going to diagnose you with pre-diabetes, like saying, okay, you
Oh,
know,
okay.
it's between 100 and 125.
Oh, I'm sorry,
But
what was
that-
that? The glucose? The what?
Glucose, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You're still talking about glucose, fasting glucose.
We can almost use a chart for this to help explain it, couldn't
Yeah.
we?
Well, it can get so confusing because they're saying that, okay, if I understand what you were saying, under 99 if you are diabetic.
No,
Type
this
2,
is
no.
normal.
They're
Now, listen,
saying under 99
under 99 is
is normal.
normal.
That's
Okay,
normal.
now if you're going to be pre,
Mm-hmm.
that's where they're saying 100 to 125.
25. Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
Correct.
Thank you.
And what they consider to diagnose you as diabetes is 126 or above.
Mhm.
So again, you can compare all of those numbers to what people who really study nutrition and understand the body want you to be at less than 86.
Mhm.
So you're a third less. It's pretty significant. And then you have another value that's how does your body respond after you've eaten some food? So you eat a typical meal, and then you wait a 2-hour window, within a 2-hour window, and you then take your blood sugar again. And this is how did your body respond to what you put in it? And that one, your normal would be less than 140. You can look at my chart
I know,
later.
I'm giving up on this, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Pre-diabetic is going to be 140 to 199. And then diabetic is going to be over 200. But your functional medicine people, they say ideally that should be less than 120. So you can think of that as almost like a fitness test. So when you stress, like a stress test for your heart to see how well your heart functions under stress. Well, after you eat, that's when your body needs to pump out the insulin. You need to take that food that you've just eaten, you need to break it down, you need to be able to use that and take it to your cells, however your body needs to use that. It gets used in a lot of different ways. And insulin is part of that. You don't ever want you've got an abundance of glucose at that point, and you don't ever want your blood sugar to really spike up. I mean, that leads to coma and death. So that insulin is very, very important. And so this number of after you've eaten, what happens with your insulin is a fitness test to see how well your body is producing that insulin and getting rid of the glucose. out of your system is storing it away. That's where your fat cells come in. Good little storage units.
Yes, they really are.
Very efficient.
They're extremely efficient.
See cellulite workshop next year.
Alright.
Then we got one last value.
Yep.
Which is your A1C.
Have you guys heard of A1C before? Okay. A1C is basically a snapshot of what your insulin, how that's been functioning over about a 3-month period. So it kind of gives you a lab value of how well that your pancreas, your insulin, all that is functioning within a 3-month period. So that's what this value is.
So it's like the fitness test, but over a long term.
So you kind of get a picture of where you're at. It even says, like on your labs, when you get that done, it even says, what is your average blood glucose level too? This is a fasting test, so you want to take this fasting. But it'll actually give you a value like, your average blood glucose level is, 110. You've probably seen that, right? All right, so that's what you're looking at. A1C, there's certain parameters they want you to be below as well. And this is a percentage. This is based on a percentage, not like milligrams per deciliter or anything like that. So functional medicine, they want your fasting A1C to be below 5.3. That would be considered normal with the functional nutrition, functional medicine. However, with the ADA, they state they want it below 6 for normal. That's what typically you see on most lab tests. But your pre-diabetic, if it's anywhere between 6 and 6.4%. And then diabetes is obviously 6.4 or above.
So if you look at the numbers for the functional medicine or nutrition, they seem almost really stringent or maybe even unattainable, especially if you struggle in that area. But there are certain techniques and ways that you can eat, particularly exercise plays into it as well, but eating I think is where we really have a lack of knowledge. That is how people can reliably get these numbers and stay safe with their blood sugar.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping stabilized blood sugar and lower levels, like what the functional medicine recommends, is actually anti-aging. So it helps our body to stay young, less prone to
Wrinkles?
to all of the things we associate with aging, but
You tell, I'm 65 years old.
let's get real about what we care about. Yeah, we care about our waistline and our wrinkles.
Really, let's get real. All right, we want to look good on the outside as well as be really healthy on the inside, right?
Yeah.
Come on.
Okay.
Let's look at what we
No
can really
argument.
do. True.
So what does the normal person have? I mean, say
Wait.
the baby, what do they start with?
I'm
As
not
far as
sure
to
that I know infant
Or
blood.
A1C.
Yeah, I don't know those.
I mean, what I was saying is, what is normal? Not someone who's eating really clean and really well, but just a normal, typical person who's not yet on that
Yeah, they would be on
pre-diabetic
these
row.
in the normal row.
They'd be 6, or would they
Yeah, maybe
easily be
there's some
5.1 or?
there's some variance there.
There's definitely variance there, but you just want to look, typically what I look when I'm looking at lab values is I'm looking at more of these functional medicine markers. If I see somebody is at 99, that does not fit well to me. That is something that's a red flag to me, looking from a functional nutrition standpoint, that something has to be done now.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So that would come back on your normal blood work as, okay, you're in great shape, and then next year you're pre-diabetic, right? So that's excellent point where the functional nutrition gives you a lot of wiggle room so that you're not, one year normal and the next year not.
You have a way to conduct those tests yourself?
That's a blood test, yeah, so
But
those
you
are done.
can conduct that?
Or us as
Yes, yes.
Those
Yeah.
are-
Yeah,
Those are
we do,
ordered at a lab, so we don't do blood draws here in the office.
No,
but
we
they're
don't do
ordered from
any
a
of that.
lab.
Yeah, but we can create the requisition to do so.
So let's talk a little bit about the nutrition part of this. I think that's really where our knowledge is lacking. And since we're doing the Weston A. Price workshops next year, let's talk about Weston A. Price just a little bit, because that's really
Yeah.
fascinating, and I think that's a great avenue to understand and,
Yeah, and you can
And
build
enjoy
upon that
nutrition.
knowledge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really, enjoy it.
yeah. So have any of you, except you, Susan, heard of Weston A. Price? And Susan. Okay, so yes, some yeses and some no's, so bear with me for a moment. So Weston A. Price is a dentist that was practicing in the early 1920s,
30s.
1930s in Ohio.
Oh, I don't remember
I
that
think
part.
Ohio, and it's somewhere here in America. And he was noticing a real change in the amount of cavities and crooked teeth that he was seeing just in his population of dental patients, especially with the younger generation. And so it got really kind of piqued his interest, and he thought, what's happening all of a sudden that I'm seeing such a drastic change just in one generation in my office. And so he started to research in a bunch of different areas and found that it was nutritionally based. And so this started a life of research for this man. So what he ended up doing was traveling around the world to areas where he could find pockets of people who did not eat a Western diet like the rest of us do. So these were people on remote islands and remote mountaintops in the South Pacific, in Switzerland, in places in Africa. And what he found with these people is that they had none of the cavity or spacing issues that we do here in America.
How many of you have seen a National Geographic photo of these gorgeous children in Africa with these wide mouth, these gorgeous teeth, and they just pop,
Yeah.
right? They've never seen a toothbrush or a toothpaste ever in their lives. Yet they've got these beautiful, teeth and healthy.
And he, as his research got a little bit further, he also saw that they had wide palates, wide nasal cavity, and a little bit wider between the eyebrows as well, which further research down the line showed that this is why they don't have spacing issues, they don't have crowding of teeth, why they don't have recurrent sinus infections, a ton of stuff that plague us, and he found it was all related back to diet.
Of the mother too. Not just that of the mother, because these are all midline issues. This is actually how the baby is formed in the womb.
Yeah, once you're born, you're not changing what's happening at the midline. Yeah. So the way that he found that these people were eating was not like what we think of as like a paleo diet. The way these people were eating was a lot more like our great-great-grandparents would. So, or maybe at this point, great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're not talking about like turkey legs and tubers. We're talking about a lot less processed food. So less flours, less.
Or none at all, really, almost in some of these cultures, hardly any at all.
Hardly, yeah, sometimes, or it's prepared significantly differently. Hardly any sugar. Back to the chart. And they were eating a lot of fermented foods. So fermentation is a way that we use to preserve food before we have refrigerators or canning, that kind of thing. So think like kimchi. That's your the way that you preserve the cabbage if you don't have a refrigerator.
And that's an ancient process.
and delicious.
So not sauerkraut, but
Sauerkraut too.
Good.
No,
Sauerkraut
too.
Mhm.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
just, it just depends which continent you're talking about.
Yeah, if you're in Asia, you're doing kimchi. If you're in Switzerland, you're probably, or Germany, you're probably doing sauerkraut. Every culture had their version of it. Like for instance, in Switzerland, they actually ate a lot of milk product, but it was fermented, like yogurts and cheeses and or fresh milk right from the cow. Like there's no fridge, so you're obviously not milking the cow and then saving that for later. You're either drinking it fresh or you're fermenting it.
Yeah.
In Japan, they have in Texas, we call it natto, but I was corrected by someone who speaks Japanese, and the way she says it, I'm not even going to be able to like get close to pronouncing it, but it's Natto.
So natto for us, Texas.
It was something very sharp, like natto. We'll have to ask her. She's going to help host some of our Western prices next year.
So it's fermented soybeans, and it's nasty.
Although she says it's quite good, so I want to try her version of it.
Okay.
I'll take
Live at the
I'll take the kimchi.
Yeah.
Kimchi, yeah.
Yeah, he eats all day long.
well, I think. Do you think it's based upon the age?
What do you mean?
Well, like the Hawaiian poi, I think is very good fresh, but I think it's probably stronger and maybe not
Yeah,
as
over
It could
time.
be.
attractive
It could be.
days later.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I've tried
She
it.
says she brings home suitcases full of it from Japan, and they're in these little boxes, and she'll open one up and eat it for breakfast. So.
Maybe it's different in Japan. I don't know. I haven't been to Japan.
Is there a particular kind of kimchi that's better than another?
It needs to be
Or brand?
refrigerated, so you need to make sure you get one that's refrigerated, and
You can make your own.
But
yeah,
yeah,
you can.
Because I've
If-
made
yeah.
it before.
If the fermentation was no refrigerator, why
Yeah.
does it need to be refrigerated?
Well,
Yeah.
they keep it in
Now-
cool places.
So-
They keep it in a cool area, like in cellar or
It
something.
continues to ferment until it's chilled. So if in order for us to have a good option to mass produce and get it to our people, we at some point it has to go into a refrigerator. Otherwise, it continues to ferment. You're going to have bottles exploding, and you're not going to know how fermented that product is. So the ones that we buy in a grocery store, they've been fermented, and then they stop that fermentation process, seal the can, and put it in a fridge. That keeps it safe for us. Now, if we're going to make it at home, eventually we're going to want to stop that fermentation process too, and we just put it in the fridge.
And it lasts up to 6 months in your fridge. That's what's so great.
Wow.
It's so good.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hungry now.
So let's talk about what a traditional diet would look like, how that's different from what we're eating as far as sugar levels, how we can make good choices there.
Well, you're looking at you want to have some sort of protein, and traditional diets, which they don't now, they actually had a lot of organ meats in them as well. You know, heart. That's probably one of the biggest
Liver.
ones. Heart
Liver.
and liver is probably some of the bigger ones. Even the brains. You know, things I know. It's not something necessarily we think about now, but we do eat liver. You know.
Jody says some of us eat liver.
Well, we meaning not you, but we
Right.
as a culture. It's
Yes.
not weird. You know, you'll see it on Luby's menu. You know what I mean? So I mean, you're gonna
With
gonna
onions.
find it with onions, yes.
Yes,
So that would be one thing.
but I heard organ meats are better for you than the meat, if you're gonna eat meat.
They both have their
Yeah.
they both have advantages to them,
Mhm.
but organ meat is some of the most nutrient dense
Yes.
food that you can get. But if you think about like an animal as a whole, the majority of the animal is meat,
Mhm.
and a small portion of it is organ meat. So if we're gonna eat sustainably, we're gonna eat more meat and a little bit less organ meat.
Right.
And that's how these people ate too. Nothing goes to waste,
Right.
even down to boiling the bones and making a mineral-rich bone broth.
Bone broth.
Mhm.
Which is very nutritious. It's
Yes.
awesome stuff. We got some in the freezer right
Oh, awesome.
What else? A lot of vegetables, in-season vegetables. That was probably one of the biggest things. You know, they didn't have a Walmart to go to get whatever they wanted. I mean, we can't grow bananas here in Texas, believe it or not, but we can get them all year round.
I did see some at the farmer's market and I thought, that's a little suspicious.
Yeah, they really don't grow bananas here in Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe in Brownsville, but not.
Yeah,
here.
in season is really important because, okay, so let's think about this from a sugar perspective. So, fruits and vegetables, on the high sugar end, you've got your fruits, right? So bananas are pretty high in sugar, apples, melons, that really sweet, what you would think of as summer fruits. Then coming down a little bit, you've got berries that are also quite sweet, but easier glycemically for you. And then you've got some of your sweeter vegetables, like I was gonna say corn, but like a sweet potato, or corn is actually not a vegetable.
I know.
It's a grain. And then getting all the way down to the far end, you've got like a leafy green, chard, collard greens, that kind of thing. So in our culture, we don't really, go out to the field and pick something out of our garden. We go to the grocery store and everything's available all the time. So being knowledgeable about what's in season and what's not in season is helpful because you can get, again, the most nutrient-dense version of that food because it's actually been raised recently and locally, so purchasing something local. But then also...
I thought you were going to tell us that our body has sort of a seasonal cycle, and it needs the high sugar in the summer and the low sugar
because
in
of
the
what
other
we're doing,
seasons.
Yeah.
And so we need to eat the foods
Yeah.
in the right season.
But if you think about it, if you're limited to eating melons for a short period in the summer because that's when they're ripe and that's when you grow them, then you're naturally limited on how much sugar that you're consuming, right? But if you go to the grocery store and it's available, New Year's to Christmas, then you're never naturally limited in that way, so you have to put some thought into what you're choosing. Like for instance, we've got a little lettuce garden that will continue producing lettuce all winter for us. That's something that would naturally be able to be grown all winter. Your chard and your
Chard's so easy too.
grows like weeds.
It comes
Yeah.
back.
So being knowledgeable about that and limiting the amount of fruits and vegetables that you choose that are really high in sugar and choosing the ones that are lower in sugar. And that's really easily Googleable. So you can find out what's in season in your area and then also compare that to what are the most high in sugar and what are the lowest in sugar.
So that actually kind of makes it simple because what you're looking at is you're actually looking at real food. Fruits and vegetables are real.
Sometimes. I've seen some
Sometimes.
wax ones.
Yes. But I mean, you're looking at something that's not processed. It comes to us, straight off the vine, the tree, whatever. So therefore, what you're getting is real food. I mean, we can get into what's organic, what's GMO, but let's just kind of keep it simple. Eat fruits and vegetables that are in season. Like I said, very Googleable. And try and get as local to our area as possible. Sometimes we can't do that, just depending on where we live, but that's probably another level that you can take it to.
Yeah.
And then as far as your protein products, you want to make sure you're getting good quality meat as well. So, I mean, has anybody ever done like a co-op or anything like that with purchasing meat? That's really important as well. So, again, this is not something you have to do right away. Just make sure you're getting the best quality meat. Whole Foods has a great system of what they call the animal welfare. To where you'll be able to kind of rate that. It's a good place to start. A little more expensive. to get it at places like Whole Foods and everything, but there's plenty of places that we can give you, being Weston A. Price chapter leaders, that we can give you some information on that.
Is organic at the grocery store, does that count?
Yeah, it does. It does. But it is more expensive than if you got it straight from your farmer.
Oh, so the co-op is cheaper than the grocery store?
Not the co-op per se, getting it straight from the farmer. So we can talk about that. I know that you're doing, which is Butcher Box?
Yeah, we started doing Butcher Box, which I really like because it's super simple. And they have the best quality. So when you start talking about quality of meats, there's so many variables and it can get really confusing. But you're looking at at the bottom level, you're looking at how was the animal treated. And then you're looking at what was the animal fed. And then you're looking at, was that animal fed that for their entire life or part of their life? And so there's all different levels there. And Whole Foods goes up to this level. And then there's another level up here, which is what you would get if you get it from an organic, sustainable farmer or a rancher. And this level up here is what Butcher Box gives you.
Oh.
So this is an animal that was pasture raised for its entire life, from the time it was born until the time it was butchered. And that's all of your meats. So if you eat pork, you can get pork there. You can get your beef there. I think they have chicken, although we don't get the chicken because we have Windy Meadows locally that has really awesome chicken there at almost all your farmers markets.
I'm sorry, I'm not from here, so
It's okay.
What's Wendy's Meadows?
Windy Meadows.
W-I-N-D-Y?
Uh-huh.
Mhm. And they have drop-off points all over, all over town, all over the area.
Parking lots.
But yeah,
Uh-huh.
Oh, do they?
you meet your farmer in the parking lot
Yeah.
for the trade-off.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you're looking for something really simple and the highest quality, Butcher Box is about the same price as Whole Foods, but a better standard.
Is that online?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so you
It's
just go on the
simple.
website, you put in what you want,
Oh,
they ship it to you, it comes frozen, and you put it right in your freezer.
so like butcherbox.com.
I
Yeah.
bet that probably would be it. I
Or
bet
I'll
just
try
Google
for
it,
it
yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. You'll be able to find it. It's super simple.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about proper preparation of grains and when to maybe go grain-free as a
Yeah.
healing technique.
So not everybody needs to go grain-free. You know, I think that if you're really, really struggling with weight, with the metabolic issues we have here, or you're already diabetic, or you're kind of pushing the limit, you know, just getting rid of grains in your diet will actually just automatically reduce your blood sugar, because most grains, what do? They're all carbohydrates, right?
Yeah.
So it makes that right there, just starting there may be able to help you. However, not everybody needs to do that. The proper preparation of grains is really important to help digest them, to help get them added benefits to your body. So that's probably one of the bigger things, like, you know, soaking your grains, I think, is really important.
Yeah.
Sourdough. If you're
Yeah.
sourdough bread, that's how they make it.
Yeah, it's actually a fermented grain, and that's seen in other cultures as well. Like a sprouted rice is a form of this. There are fermented corn meal dishes that are seen in Central and South America. So when what Dr. Price looked around, he saw this same pattern in in a bunch of different cultures around the world who had never communicated with each other. If they were eating grain, they were eating the grain in a fermented manner. So what happens with the fermenting process is that it neutralizes something called phytic acid, which is an anti-nutrient, which means that it can starve your body of other minerals. And the sprouting process that happens, not with sourdough, but with some of the other methods, actually brings that grain to the most nutritious point. It opens it up and makes it easily digestible for your body. Really fascinating, huh?
Yeah.
So does sprouted mean fermented?
To get to the sprouted point, it's been soaked. The fermentation part happens after that, depending on how you prepare it.
So yeah, the reason why phytic acid's in these grains is because you don't want, your grains just to start sprouting willy-nilly, just in the air. So they actually have a chemical that keeps them from sprouting until it's actually placed in water. Until it actually, so it goes, oh, well now I can sprout because I'm in water now. So that's why when you've got just grain just sitting there, you don't want, your corn kernels and stuff to start sprouting. You've got to make sure that they stay that way. So it's actually part of the mechanism of the plant.
It's kind of funny.
Willy-nilly.
Get a mental picture of that.
Like potatoes sprout from their
Yeah.
eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, beans are part of those. Beans have a lot of phytic acid in them. So that's why you soak your beans. This is why you soak them, not just to make them easier to cook, but why you soak your beans prior to cooking them,
Yeah.
because it gets rid of that phytic acid.
Has nothing to do with cleaning them. It has everything to do with breaking those bonds and creating a different availability of nutrients. Yeah. So, if a person was to go grain-free, what could that offer them? If say someone's diabetic, they're looking for options on how to change their diet. They've already cut out sugar, not drinking a lot of sugary drinks, not going crazy on the fruits.
Right.
How would grain-free help be a next step?
Well, reduce inflammation. A lot of grains, because of the way they're prepared, like say for instance your typical loaf of bread, things like that, they are very high in not only carbohydrates, but the grains themselves are very inflammatory to the system. A lot of people have heard of gluten-free diets and things like that. Not everybody is gluten intolerant. It really has to do with how well your body processes it. If you're already in that pre-diabetic, in my estimation, if you're above 80, if you're at 87 or above, that to me is you're struggling at this point in time. So taking that out of your diet will not only reduce your carbohydrate load, but will reduce the inflammatory response that is actually occurring in your body because of your diabetic state or your high blood sugar state.
Does organic count?
No.
In that? Okay.
No, because you're still looking at just like, organic sugar and regular sugar, they're still sugars. So your body's still going to react to that.
In the grains too.
In the grains as well. Yeah. So it's still there. It's still a carbohydrate. It still turns to sugar when it goes into your body. Is it better? Yes, because it doesn't have a lot of the chemicals that are associated with, the non-organic. But so it is a better choice, of course. But when it comes to blood sugar, it's not going to make much difference.
Thank you.
So what specific questions might there be? We've got a couple minutes left, and I want to make sure that we address anything really specifically that comes to mind. If there was this new information, old information, but you still have some knowledge gaps, where are we at? Yes, ma'am.
My question is, how do I is it possible for me to eliminate my diabetes even though I've had it for 17 years?
So let me ask you this. Are you insulin dependent right now?
Yes.
Okay. So how long did it take you, because you're type 2, so when you first started, you didn't start right away with insulin, right?
Yes.
They did? They start you...
Yes.
Oh,
I've
wow.
been taking insulin ever since I've been diagnosed.
Wow, that's different.
Because at one time, one of my endocrinologists told me that she had mentioned something about maybe I was 1, but it was probably that 1.5.
I see. Okay.
This was many years ago before
Yeah.
it became really known.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so she had asked me some question, and she said, well, it looks like you're a lot more towards a 1. But she didn't say the 0.5, but
Yeah.
she just kind of said 1. So then I got really confused. Where am I?
Okay.
So Is it possible that my pancreas is still producing enough insulin on its own that with serious change in my diet that I can eliminate diabetes from my vocabulary
In your case,
and my life?
Yeah. Well, in your case, it's really hard to say whether you're going to be able to eliminate it.
Mhm.
You're already insulin dependent,
Mhm.
and quite possibly you have the autoimmune form
Mhm.
where your pancreas has been damaged.
Yes.
So, best case scenario, and I never put any limits on anybody's ability to heal.
Right.
Okay, that's not up to me.
Right.
However, I do believe that you can
Mhm.
take less insulin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know that can happen.
Okay. I'll accept that. I mean,
You
if
know?
I'm at a point where I cannot totally eliminate diabetes, if you will,
Right.
if I could even lower the insulin intake and the amount that, I take it 3 to 4 times a day.
Yeah. Yeah.
If I can get it down to 2, I'd be happy, or 1,
Yeah.
3, whatever, anything that's making it
I have
be
seen
better.
that happen. There's a particular, it's a purification program
Mhm.
that we have, and I actually had a patient who, same as you,
Mhm.
type 1.5.
Mhm.
She was taking 4 shots a day,
Mhm.
and within the first week of being on this purification program, she only took 1 shot at night.
That was cool.
So
Yes,
I thought that
I'd
was
accept
really-
that.
Now-
Yeah.
and you've got to stick with the
Right,
diet.
right.
You know, it's a lifestyle change,
Right.
and diet's a 4-letter word. I don't want to
Yes.
put that out there.
No, I don't,
But-
yeah.
But really, it's you learn what you need. Now,
Mhm.
because you're insulin dependent too, you are very meticulous on
Mhm.
taking your blood sugar levels. You have to be,
Yes.
right? Because you don't
Yes.
want to go too low, you don't want to go too
That's
high.
right. Oh,
So, by doing that, you'll be able to watch your blood sugar levels and make sure that what if your blood sugar level is normal? Are you going to take your shot? No.
no.
So you have to be very meticulous during this purification program. But it's a really good start for those that are both insulin dependent to kind of help normalize that, to hopefully maybe take less.
Mhm.
You know, if your pancreas has been damaged to the point where it's not producing enough insulin, which sounds to be the case from what your doctors are telling you, then you'll probably have to take insulin for the rest of your life, but
Mhm.
taking less is always
Less is
better.
always better, yes, okay.
But type 2 diabetes, without being insulin dependent, can be completely 100% reversed by changing your diet and your lifestyle. By exercising 2 to 3 times a week, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. By making sure you're eating real food, eliminating, sometimes, just for a few months, eliminating grains. And just really eating a diet rich in good quality meat, lots and lots of vegetables and minimal proteins, and even high fat. Like avocados, typical Mediterranean diet has been shown to reverse a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So,
We've seen such a wide variety of health issues that have been able to be resolved with going grain-free for a while. And it's not something that everybody needs to do. I think it's become a little bit of a fad lately. But there are a number of autoimmune type of disease processes that can be reversed that way.
yeah, and it's for a short period of time. It doesn't have to be a forever thing. It's just a not right now thing.
Well, I think one of the difficulties with growing gluten-free is that it's if you're not eating natural food,
Right.
it's in so much of the processed food that you don't even realize it's really there.
Right.
But for those who are truly sensitive, of course, the minute they take a bite, they get hit with it.
Yeah, and then there's the distinction between gluten-free and grain-free. So gluten-free is just avoiding wheat products. Grain-free is avoiding wheat and barley and corn,
Oats?
oats, rice, all of it.
Wow.
Yeah. I heard something today that I thought was a great health tip, and it was, instead of going to the pantry to eat, go to the fridge. You're not going to get any of your processed food that way.
Question. So, if you're gonna reduce the grain and go with protein, what are some other sources of protein other than meat and not dairy?
Other than meat and not
Nuts
any
and
meat,
seeds. Nuts and seeds.
are we saying fish fish.
That's fine. I just eat, I go through so many eggs. I could do without
Yeah.
meat entirely. I just don't really like it that much.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But dozens and dozens of eggs for my proteins.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay.
Nuts
But
and
nuts, you
seeds
can
are
only
great.
eat such a little bit
Yeah.
of it. That's all you really need.
Are you choosing to not eat meat for?
I'm not, I eat meat.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's just, I could do without it. Doesn't taste that
Yeah.
great to me.
I
eat it.
completely agree with you there. I feel the same way about it, but again and again, I come back to I've got to eat more meat. I mean, it's just there's none of those societies that were looked at or measured didn't eat meat
Right.
on a pretty
'Cause
regular
that's their
basis.
source.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it was clean.
Oh,
Yeah, they raised it in their beautiful alpine mountains.
Where they ran
Yeah.
after it and
Yeah.
they speared it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, you know,
Clean and fresh.
yeah.
We might like meat a lot more if we got it that way, wouldn't we?
Nothing would go to waste if that was the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you do bone broth, I mean, is that like protein?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's a great, and it's easily digestible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy to do.
And if you add
It's so
collagen or gelatin, those are really high in protein as well.
What did you say?
Collagen or gelatin.
Like
Yeah,
the-
additives.
That container.
Yeah.
But yeah, just-
Great Lakes,
Yeah.
Yeah, Great Lakes, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been hearing more and more about that
But
collagen.
would both,
Yeah.
would both of those violate the vegan, vegetarian?
Yeah.
That's-
Yeah, collagen is a great source of protein that can help you in other ways too. It's really, you want to get it from a good source. I really like the Great Lakes brand. You can get that a lot of places.
Collagen's a little bit more versatile than the gelatin, just because collagen can be added to really anything. It can be added to hot foods, cold foods, because it doesn't gel up, where gelatin does gel when it gets cold, so it can only be added to hot foods.
So is collagen it's a source of protein?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's basically.